Warriors are pretty good at being patient. When you look around, there's still a number of free agents, some restricted. The problem that they all have, of course, is that the market is pretty soft. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of demand, and there isn't a whole lot of money out there to be thrown around. With Kuminga, his misfortune is that it's timing. He's on the market at a time when the market's not giving you much. I think in the best of both worlds, they'd be totally prepared to move on and might feel better for it.
What could happen and what's even possible, because there's so many rumors that get thrown out that because of aprons and rules and money are not even possible. So let's see if we can get some answers right now here on Willard and Dibs by welcoming in on the River Islands guest line one of the absolute best out there, Monte Poole on the Warriors with NBC Sports Bay Area. Monte, thank you so much for the time. How you doing?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
We're doing great, man. What would you say right now in terms of handicapping Jonathan Kuminga's situation with regard to either staying or are sign and trade possibilities still out there?
With every passing day, it looks more and more likely that he could stay. However, the Warriors are pretty good at being patient. And when you look around, there's still a number of free agents, some restricted, that are still out there. The problem that they all have, of course, is that the market is pretty soft. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of demand, and there isn't a whole lot of money out there to be thrown around. So with Kuminga, his misfortune is that it's timing. You know, he's available at a time. He's on the market at a time when there is not a lot of opportunity. The market's not giving you much. So I think in the best of both worlds, for him and for the team, I think they'd be totally prepared to move on and might feel better for it. But the way things are going, you can't rule out the fact that he might be back with his team. So I don't think there's a clear path one way or the other. I think they both would be willing to move on, but circumstances have to be right. And so we've heard about the deal with the Kings, and if you're the Warriors, you turn that down, and which they basically have. So that's kind of where it is right now. And the Warriors have guys they'd like to get, but until something happens with Jonathan, they're kind of in this escrow where they can't do a whole lot. They have the taxpayer mid-level exception to dangle, and by all accounts, they seem to be holding that for Al Horford, who has not decided whether he wants to play again. So what do they do if he doesn't? If Anthony Melton's in the mix again? So there's a lot of things that are happening, but as we said, I think a month ago or more than a month ago, that the Warriors' offseason will be largely dictated by what happens with Kuminga.
And with no resolution on the horizon, what does Mike Dunleavy do if Kuminga is still reluctant to sign or just come in on the qualifying offer and there's no sign and trade that seems to be palatable for the Warriors? What ultimately will be their end game as far as other free agents go?
They won't have a lot of options. They won't have a lot of options. And, there's a couple things that have happened that make me wonder. And one of these things was when DeAndre Ayton came available as a free agent. The Blazers bought him out. He's cleared waivers. Talked to three people around the league that I talked to, and one other person I talked to indirectly. And my question was, did the Warriors show any interest in DeAndre Ayton because he checks a lot of boxes? And they all said no. And I thought, I would make him tell me no. He's 7 feet tall. He can shoot it. Does he come with red flags? Yes, he does. But the Warriors have never been afraid of that, remember? They brought in JaVale McGee when nobody else wanted him. He didn't sign with the Warriors until, I think, September of that year. They brought in a guy like Nick Young, who was considered, a certified slacker. They brought in Nick Young. Everybody's like, why would they do that? Well, they've won 2 championships with JaVale McGee. They won a championship with Nick Young. They brought in DeMarcus Cousins. When people were saying, oh, he's a headache, he's this, he's that. They made it to the finals with DeMarcus Cousins on the roster, knowing he would miss half the year. Made it to the finals and probably would win if not for the injuries to Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. Even Andrew Wiggins, there were some questions about that move. And the Warriors have always been firm in saying that we trust our culture. We trust our culture. So DeAndre Ayton, I don't understand why they would at least, as they say, kick the tires. It's a natural thing to me, I would think, because, for one, like I said, he checks all the boxes. For two, they still have their culture, set by Steve Kerr and Steph Curry. But they also have Buddy Hield, a fellow Bahamian, who knows DeAndre Ayton very well. They have on their staff assistant coach Chris DeMarco, who coached the Bahamian national team, who knows DeAndre Ayton too. And I from all I can gather, these guys didn't, want to stand and say, no, we can't do this. So it seems that I just feel like the Warriors in the past would have said, let's see what he has to say. Let's talk to him. Let's kick the tires. And I was told uniformly that no, they did not engage. And so the Lakers signed him for 2 years, second-year option, 2 years, $16.6 million. The Warriors couldn't do that, but their $5.7 million taxpayer mid-level was there. They could have conceivably done that. And instead, I was told, no, there was no interest. And I find that curious, given what the Warriors really need in the Western Conference, where there's so much size and impact in the paint. And right now, they don't have a veteran center. Kevon Looney's left the building. So they're waiting on Al Horford. What if he retires? So one person I talked to did say, okay, don't dismiss the Warriors because they can probably still come up with something that works. I'm not counting them out, he said. But yeah, he says, I think Ayton could have done good work for this team, especially given the environment he would have been in. So I think we're all wondering, what's going to be, what happens if J.K. stays on the roster? If they move him, then they have the non-taxpayer mid-level, and that's more money. But that hasn't happened, and they couldn't get that to Ayton or anybody else because J.K.'s still on the roster. So they're kind of stuck right now.
So, Monty, what does that tell you? Like, if that makes you curious that they didn't do it, and we all know the Warriors aren't dumb, so, like, the fact that they weren't even interested, does that sort of make you believe that there is something else in the works?
I think you have to believe that they're up to something. But what it is, it has to come through trade now. And that means future draft picks. And, from what I understand, they have value because we all know that their current core is on in years. And so they have extra value now because the Warriors will need to rebuild pretty soon. So it's going to be really interesting, intriguing to me to wonder what will they do if Al Horford joins them for 1 year. That answers that question. I mean, he's 12 years older and 3 inches shorter than DeAndre Ayton, but they didn't have a skilled center who's a seamless fit and comes with no red flags. But if that doesn't happen, that's when it really gets, okay, what do they do now? And that's where the decision, that's a decision they don't want to have to make. They're banking on Al to play, and they're hoping he does. But from what I hear, he is considering retiring. So I think once he decides what he's going to do is when we'll know where the Warriors head.
Yeah, and even when he decides, if the Kuminga conundrum hasn't been resolved, I'm not sure how much they can move forward. Monty, if they do bring Kuminga back on the qualifying offer for $7.9 million, does that give them enough money to potentially, in your eyes, get Horford and DeAnthony Melton to both come?
Well, if Kuminga comes back on that, and you can get, it depends on how much money they want. I mean, now you look. Last year, DeAnthony Melton got a mid-level. That wouldn't be available. So he's coming off injury. There's other teams that are looking at him. Would he play for the minimum? That's the question. With Kevon Looney out of the building now, and he wasn't going to come back for a minimum because that's all the Warriors would have offered him. Gary Payton a second. Would he come back for a veteran's minimum? For him, it's about $3.3 million, I think. I guess he loves it here, so maybe. But he wants to know too what his value is out there. The last time he did that, he got a $25 million, I think it was $25 million contract from the Blazers. And GP2 made $9 million last year. The Warriors are not going to go anywhere near that this year if he comes back. So that's what you're looking at, because right now Steph and Jimmy they have the lion's share of the Warriors cap money.
Monty, why do we keep hearing the Warriors come up with regard to Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal? How realistic are either of those?
Well, Damian Lillard's he was stretched, so he's getting paid by the Bucks for a while.
Right.
So when he plays, it depends on who wants to. If Bradley Beal is bought out again, he'll be getting paid for a while. So at some point, it does become how much are you willing to pay for? Or how little are you willing to play for if you want to be a part of this team? And that's what it comes down to, because, if Damian Lillard wants to take a minimum offer to play for the Warriors, obviously this next year he will not play. But the following year, I think it'll be 36, I think then. You'll have him if it's a 2-year deal. So that's where the money comes in. And, every team on earth is definitely afraid of the second apron, and I understand that, because if you get to the second apron, you're just basically screwed. And so they all want to avoid that, and that's why the money thing is so important. You can dip into the first. The second apron is punitive, and it crushes you. So it depends on how little money guys are willing to take to play with the Warriors. And again, there was a time when guys would gladly take the minimum. Zaza Pachulia, minimum deal. David West, minimum deal. They would get quality players with minimum contracts. That's harder to do now because the Warriors aren't what they used to be. They're not a clear leader of the pack of championship contenders. They are now another tier below. They were bounced out in the second round, and when Steph went down, they were swept out. So it's a little harder for them to sell what they could sell so well a few years ago.